Lenin, a black Gemara. We are up to the Kesuvos and Aleph. We learned in the Mishnah. Rabbi Yossi told us that there was an incident once with a girl who went to draw water from the well, and then she was coerced by somebody. Rabbi Yechon ben Nuri said, if the roiv is kosher, that's good enough. And the Gemara said that Rav Nachman said that when Rabbi Yechon ben Nuri says that the roiv is good enough, it's talking about you need two roivs. That, and he follows Rabbi Yeshua, even though General Rabbi Yeshua said you don't believe her when she tells us who the person was. But you have two roivs, the locals and the foreigners. That makes it plausible. So we're up to the Gemara that says Vav and Aleph. We said it happened at the time of the market to Tzipori, and at that time there were two roivs, an influx of people plus the locals itself. And however, if somebody left Tzipori and went over there, there's only one roiv, and he wouldn't be believed. So we're up to, we said this Charles are Stucky. So we're up to 6 lines on the top of the page in the middle of the line. Similar to Abdimi came along from Israel, and he said the name of Zid, name of Chanina. But others say Zidi, of Chanina. Zid is the name of Chanina. He says you follow the majority of the city. The ain holchin achar roiv siyam. We don't look at the majority of the influx of people that came in. Says the logic is the reverse. Klapilai literally means which direction are you going? It doesn't make sense. It's illogical. Now we have a rule that whenever there's a majority, you follow majority. But if it's in a fixed place, it's called kavua. Called kavua kemechza mechdam. We had a number of cases already. Anything that's fixed is like half and half. And in the city, everybody has their place, their locale. So therefore, they're like fixed. So it's like 50 chances. This person or that person, doesn't matter the numbers of majority. But if they're moving about, they look at the majority. So the people are traveling, they're moving about. There, you follow majority. If most people are kosher, it should be kosher. But if you look at the locals of the city, it doesn't matter what the majority is. They're all fixed, all kavua, and kol kavua, kemechza mechdam. So on the contrary, what are you telling me? Sounds like from here that he's saying one roiv is enough. But which roiv? The roiv of the people in the city. If anything, it should be the roiv of the influx of people are coming in. Says you want to kalapilai, which direction you're going. Hani naidi, the people who coming, the influx of people, they're moving about. Bahani kvi, v'kaima, these are fixed. So therefore, on the contrary, the people in the city is a problem. Ella, you're right. This is how you're supposed to learn Zaidi. Holchin achar roiv, you need two roivs. You go after the majority of the city, but who provided the ikar roiv siya bahade? That is influx of people also, most of them are kosher to her. So you have two roivs, a double roiv. The ain holchin achar roiv ikar, you don't look at the majority of the city on its own because they're kavua, and the ain achar roiv siya gredos, nor do you follow the majority of the influx of people. Now the question is, what's the difference, double roiv or a single roiv? Says, well, in my time, why? Okay, I understand in the city it's kavua, but why don't we rely, if it came from one of the foreigners who came in the city, and we know the majority of the people who came on that market day are kosher, Eden, so what's the problem? Why do we say that she's still not good enough? You need two roivs. My time, gzeira, roiv siya oto roiv, because if we're going to allow a person to say that's all right, because of the majority of people and the influx of people are kosher, we're going to automatically also assume, people are going to assume that it happened in the city, the majority of people are eating, it's also good enough. They don't understand the difference. And therefore, we can gzeira, roiv siya oto roiv ir. And even in the city, it depends. If she goes to their house, then it's kavua, because they're living in a fixed place, and called kavua kemechza mechza. But if the man goes to her place and rapes or whatever he does to her, that goes to her place, then it's no longer kavua. He left his habitat, so that's a parish. You follow the majority. So even within the city, it really depends who went where. So the mother because even in the city, if the man went to her, called the parish, we should follow the majority. So what's going on? He said, well, you're right. Again, we're talking about a case where she went to him. The Havalei Kavua, he's sitting in his home, so therefore he is fixed, he's Kavua. And the rule is called Kavua kemechza mechza. So therefore, what we said was it's like a double gzera, but it isn't. It's really one long gzera. Where in the city you're not allowed to, and nor are the people coming in, even though the majority of the people in the city, if they left the house. But because it happens quite often that she went to their house, and that's Kavua. And people are therefore going to mix up and say, well, this case is permitted because the majority are Eden, so she can marry a Kohen. Why can't we assume that whoever she had dallies with was a Yid? So the same thing if she went to there. People don't understand the nuances. Therefore, we decide, you know what? In all cases, we only have a single roiv. The city or the influx of people, no good. You have to have a double roiv in order to avoid that gzera. Says the Gemara. So now we're going to discuss this concept of kavua and called it a part. Says the Gemara. But first of all, where do you find that you have to have two rois? Well, Tanya didn't be learned. We had the Gemara Psachim. There were 9 stores. All selling kosher meat. And one of them was selling non-kosher meat. And you went in the store, you were on your phone, you didn't even look which store you went into, and you bought yourself some meat. Now, when you came home, suddenly, my maid, look, your wife asked you, where did you get it from? And you don't remember which store. You were so absent-minded. You're so focused on your phone call. You have no idea which store you went into. So where did the suffix begin? The suffix is what? The store. Which store was it? And each store is fixed. That's called kavua. Sveika asa. Even though it's 9 against 1, the probability that you bought it from a kosher store, it doesn't matter. It's in the sveika asa because they all fixed the kavua. But benimtza, if you found a piece of meat in the street, so what's the question now? Not on the store, but on the meat. So what is this meat? Then you look at the laws of probability. Because it left its original place, it's no longer kavua. We look at the majority. Probability is it came from a kosher place. We go after majority. So we see from here that one raiv is enough. That one drive is enough. If you can tell me you'll tell me that one. I was talking about a case where the city has no doors and anybody can come in, and most of the and you have people, a lot of people come from other places, and all the people coming in this particular city are all Yidden or butchers or whatever, and they're for kosher meat. So you have 2 rives there, the 9 stores versus 1 plus the influx of people bringing in meat. They also bring kosher meat with them. So it says even if the walls of the city are closed, the doors are closed. So which means there's no influx of people. All you have are the locals. One rave, a single rave is good enough. Someone has to be right. You don't generally need 2 rave. Rave is always good enough. Achri Rabbi Blahatas, the Torah says. But when it comes to marrying a kohen, we are far stricter, and therefore over there, a single rave is not sufficient. You need 2 raves. The Ritva here asked, another Rishonim asked a very simple question. If you're telling me that something is fixed in its place, is kemerza mechza. So what's the whole idea of bottle b'shishim? A piece of treif and meat falls into a pot, we say bottle b'shishim. Or if you have dry pieces, and we say bottle b'raiv. What do you mean bottle b'raiv? It's kavua. Kavua is kemerza mechza. So basically what he says is kavua means that the place is identifiable. Each store is identifiable. And the question is which store you walked into. But the stores themselves are still identifiable. Here, it's a mixture. You can't see which is the kosher and which is the treif, and therefore there's no such thing as kol kavua kemerza mechza. Yeah. Anyway, there's a big argument in Achronim whether the logic is that you follow the raiv and kol kavua is exeris hakosov, or the logic is always kol kavua and the raiv follow the raiv is exeris hakosov. The Torah says achiram lahatas, and we'll soon bring a pasuk for kol kavua. So what does that mean? That logically you should always follow the laws of probability, but the Torah tells you, but if it's kavua, it's half and half. Or the logic is that since it's kavua, and you just know, just because there's more chances of this and that, but every single one of them, there's a chance that you might have walked into it. On the other hand, the idea of a rave that caused the majority, therefore we should say that that's what happened, that requires exeris hakosov. Different ways of viewing it. Now the Gemara want to know, where do we know this whole concept? Says the Gemara, Gufa, let's analyze. It said every kavua is like 50-50. Not only are we going to be taken to the stricter side, but also we're going to go to the stricter side. That what if she goes to the man and he's kavua, even though the majority of the people are Yidden, we're going to be machma, say we don't know who that person is, and as a result of that, we're going to ask that even if he leaves his house or even if you need 2 double raiv. But how about lakula? Do we follow the law of kavua lakula as well to be lenient? That even though the majority tells us it's no good, but if it's kavua, we'll say, well, it's a 50-50 chance. And what are the ramifications? Manole, how do you know what it's if you tell me you know from Teisha Chanuyas, Kulam, from the case of it, 9 stores selling meat, but Achel Boston Aveda kosher, one that sells treif, and you bought from one of them, they made luck, you don't know which one it is. And the question starts from the store and it's kavua, and therefore we're going to be machma, say it's treif. All you're doing is being machma. Remember, being machma is not even a psak. Sveika osir, the suffix is osir, is that a suffix is osir. And if you find it out in the street, go after majority. So here we see that kavua is kemerza mechza hasam l'chumra. Again, all you have there is a chumra. But rather mitisha tzfardi v'sheres ech b'neim. We learn it from the 9 following case. Frogs, tzfardim frogs are not. The Torah tells us in Parashat Shmini there are 8 different rodents that generate tumah. The rest don't. Frogs don't, but a toad, for example, does. A tzov is a toad, and it does. It's similar to a frog, but the toad is generates tumah, and the frogs don't. So what happens with 9 frogs? You touch one of them. The question is, did you become tummy or not? Then you know which is touched. Sveike tummy, they were going to be machmer say tummy. Then you have 9 that are non-tummy. You have 1 that's tummy, and you touch 1, and we treat it as if 50 you're also. So what do we see from there? That kavua is kemechza mechza. Again, the Gemara says hasanami luchumra. What are we saying? Where the result is that you are treated as if you were tummy. So we're being stringent. You know, we learned from there were 9 shiratzim. The probability is that you're tummy, and it was 1 svardeya. So we should rule that you are tummy. There was only 1 of them. And sorry, there were 9 shiratzim, 9 that were tummy. The svardeya, 1 of them is not tummy. The noga be'echad behen be'ein yedei be'ezen hand. You touch 1, you don't know which one it is. B'shusa yachid, if you're inside of shusa yachid, it's fake a tummy. The inside of shusa yachid, we have a general rule. We learn from Saita that if there's a suffix tumah in a shusa yachid, which is like a Saita, we always think the worst. So in a shusa yachid, we will say that a suffix tumah is tummy. In a shusa rabbim, we say that a suffix tumah is no longer tummy, is Torah. B'shusa yachid suffix tummy. B'shusa rabbim sveikei Torah. Here we're being lenient. Even what do you mean sveikei? There's 9 shrotzim. The probability is that you're tummy, and we're going to make it Torah. Why? Because we're going to treat it like 50-50. Because it's kavua. So here we see that 50-50, kavua is like 50-50, even to be lenient. Now the question is, how do we know that? That is always a chiddush. How do you know that? It says the following. It says that if you hated somebody and you ambushed him, and you ambushed him, the kama love, and then you jumped on him, and then you killed him, right? And then you and so on and so forth. And then we take you out of our mikvah. Now it says you ambushed him and then you jumped on him. Why does it have to say you ambushed him? Just say and you jumped on him. So Rav Shimon says from here on out, if you wanted to kill 1 Jew and by mistake you landed the punch, the one punch, single punch that kills on another Jew, you are tried for murder because you intended. The Chacham is saying you were tried for murder because you wanted to kill. Rav Shimon says no. But only if this is the person you actually intended to ambush. So if you tried to ambush X and you ambushed Y, then according to Rav Shimon you are not charged with murder. It's like an accident. And according to Chachamim, you are charged with murder, and they learn something else. So he said the pasuk, "But of loy become a loy achi yiskaven loy." You have to have kavanah for that person. And now, what about the Rabbanon? The Rabbanon hold is not true. The Rabbanon hold as long as you intended to kill at one person and you landed the punch on somebody else, you're chayiv. So we already know you're chayiv. But Rabbanon, what do they do with this pasuk? Amri dvei Rabbi Yanai prat. You know what comes to teach you? Zoydik even legoy. There's a group of people standing, and you threw a rock, and it landed on somebody. So according to Rabbanon, you intended to hurt somebody, so you're chayiv. But some of them will goyim, and we'll see in a minute. And to tell you that you're potter in that case. So what's the case? What are we talking about? If the majority of them are goyim, and there's one Eid over there, you threw a rock, and you killed the Eid, and you lie, and the din is that in this case you're potter. I need a pasuk tell me that, even if it be half and half, even if it be half Eid and half goyim, we would say, look, Suffolk. Din in the fashas, whenever there's a suffix by din in the fashas, we don't charge you with murder. So I don't need a pasuk for that. Tefillah the Ruba Kinani knew the majority are goyim. Marinami palga, and even if you tell me it's half and half, suffix in the fashas lahakol. So what's the pasuk coming to tell you that if you threw a rock amongst a group of people, some goyim, some yidden, majority are goyim, that you're not held accountable, even to be half and half. And forget the pasuk. We have a rule that when it comes to charge with murder, it has to be definitive. At least in the case of Chama, you wanted to kill X, and you killed Y. But over here, you threw into a group of people, Eden going, it's a suffix in the fascists. And we're always making because it says, we try to go out of our way to be lenient. But the lie, the chitzich, you know what you're talking about here? You know why I need a pasuk? The Ika Tisha Yisrael the Knani Echamim. There's 9 Yidden and 1 goy there. Chances are, you follow them, but the probability is you want to kill a Yid. According to Chachamim, you should be liable because you wanted to kill a Yid. 9 out of 10 are Yidden. There comes the pasuk and says, "The Arav law, you had to definitively want to kill a Yid." Here it's not 100% because it could be a goy. And why not? Because they're all fixed in a position. That's the chiddush of the pasuk. Even though there were 9 Yidden there, because they were all standing in their places and each one's identifiable on their own, so therefore it becomes like they're all fixed, and so it becomes like a 50-50 chance, and therefore you are potter, not chayv, even though the majority of cases are Yidden. Second one further, even when we learned that Chi Barashi says the name of Rab, the halach is like Rabbi Yaisi. The halach is like Rabbi Yaisi. That says that what? That like the Mishnah, the girl over there that she's believed. And Rab Chonon, now the way we understand right now is that a single roiv is good enough, because that's what the Mishnah seems to be saying. It's only the Gemara later on that says you need a double roiv. It was talking about the time of the market disappointing. So in the halach Rabbi Yaisi, the way we the way it's the Mishnah ipso facto, and that we believe one roiv. Comes along Rab Chonon bar Rava Amar Rav and says no. That was an extraordinary case, because Rabbi Yechon ben Nudi over there, either the time necessitated it for whatever reason, or he found some other angles that would be lenient. But generally, you need two rights. So it seemed that Rabbi bar Ashi, in the name of Rav, says that the halach is one right is enough, and Rabbi Chonon bar Rava says in the name of Rav, no, halachically you need two rights. Here is an exception. Says the Rabbi asked a question from another din that Rav said. You're going to tell me you don't need two rives. You're going to tell me that Rabbi Ashi says that the halacha is like Rabbi Yaisi, that all you need is a single rive, and he's saying this name of Rav. Rav himself said you need a double rive. And where did Rav say that? And Yuchsin, you don't need a double rive, but didn't he learn? Matzah, but tinuk mushla. What happens? He found the kid lying in the street. And you have no idea the status of the kid is. Most people, the majority of people living in the city of Goyim will assume the kid is a Goy. So majority of people in the city are Yidden, Yisrael will assume the kid is a Yid. Mechza, half and half, will also treat it as a Yisrael, as a kid. We'll soon see minor communities. So you have three categories there: majority Goyim, majority Yidden, and half and half. And half and half is treated like a Yid as well. When we say the majority of the people are Yid, we treat the kid like a Yid. In what respect? Allah Yisa, you have to give tzedakah to the child, and you have to sustain the child. Because Bezdin is an obligation of Bezdin to take care of everyone. It says the Chai Achichimach, make sure that all the locals in the city have what to live. So interesting responsibility on the Bezdin to make sure that all the people, to start a welfare society and make sure that everybody has a rogmach, make sure that everybody has the means and resources to be able to live. As Rashi says, it's an obligation on the leaders of the community. Interesting. But when it comes to marriage, we're not going to say, oh, well, the majority of people are Yidden will assume that this kid is a Yid. We're not going to say that at all. So if it's a girl, we're definitely going to say she's Asher the Kohen, and so on. Even if we found some kind of an omen, an amulet around her, which tells us clearly that she's a Yid, but it doesn't matter. She cannot marry a Kohen. And because when it comes to Yuchsin, we said before, we need two rives. So clearly, what does Rav say? We need two rives. So how can Rav come along, Rashi say that the Rav holds halacha like Rabbi Yaisi, a single rive is enough? Rav clearly says here that when it comes to Yuchsin, we need a double rive. Shmuel says the lefakech olav zagal. He says when we say that the majority of the Eden are Eden, it means the way on the Gemara on Shmuel right now is that on Shabbos, if this kid is under, you have to mechal Shabbos to save the kid's life. Go for it. Only if most people are Eden. The Gemara will discuss that too as well. Says the Gemara, Ishtamite Rabbi who asked this question, and he understood that Rabbi Barashi when he said Allah Rabbi Yaisi means that a single rive is enough in the name of Rab. And here we see Rab holding a double rive. Totally he forgot or he didn't realize that Rab actually said something else. The very beginning of our Gemara, and our Mishnah, Rab said, that incident of Rabbi Yechon ben Nuri. And Rabbi Yaisi was during the marketplace in Tzipori, so there was a double rive. In fact, that's exactly what Rabbi Rashi is saying here. That the Rab hold you need a double rive. It's the other Amayr who said that it was a Hayrah Shah. It was Rab Chonon bar Rava who said the name of Rab was a Hayrah Shah, which generally you don't need a double rive, might be a problem. But not according to Rashi. It says what's so new? What about Chonon bar Rava? It's a kasha, but here's a problem. He said that whole story in the Mishnah is only a new thing. That what you need double rive, but generally one rive is enough. See, Rav clearly holds you always need two rives. Says that he doesn't agree with that other version of Rav that is talking about a market day and there's a double rive. He holds that you generally don't need two rives. He holds generally all you need is one rive, and whatever happened over there, and the other way around, where Rashi learns. Rashi learns is that he learned that our Mishnah is talking about a single rive. It wasn't a market, it was a single rive. And he's saying that our Mishnah was a Hayrah Shah, because generally you always need two rives. So everyone agrees that according to Rav, you need two rives when it comes to Yuchsin. when it comes to marriage. But he learned that our Mishnah was talking about a unique thing, Harasha. It was a unique scene, scenario. And the other opinion says, no, it was talking about when there was a market day. Talking about the further side like Shmuel. But we found a kid lying the Imre, but most majority people going, which you like a guy, Imre, you saw majority people, you like Yid. Mechsa, you saw half and half is a Yid. When we say the majority of people are Yidden, we will have to sustain the person. We don't trust him when it comes to Yichs. We'll say that on Shabbos, the majority of people are Yidden, we are going to be Mechal Shabbos. Ask the Gemara, is that true? Is that really true? Shmuel actually say that for Kuach Nefesh, you need to have a majority, a good, strong probability that there's a Yid involved. In the very same Shmuel, Rabbi Yosef said in his name, when it comes to a suffix, somebody's alive or not, even though we don't know if the person is a Yid or a guy, even if a small opportunity or whether the person has a good chance of living or not, even if there's only a small likelihood to live, we have a mitzvah Mechal Shabbos and save that person. And if most people are going, we still have to save that person. Maybe the Yid. When do we say Shmuel's din? Not regarding the majority of Yidden or Yidden, but in the first case, the majority of Goyim are Goyim. Comes along Shmuel and says, in that case, if the majority of the people are Goyim, what do you mean? But when it comes to Shabbos, we don't treat the child like a Goy. We'll say there's a slight chance that he's a Yid. That's good enough. We are going to save that person. So when it says here, the majority of people are going, but you're not going. In what respect do we treat them like going? In what way? He said, yeah, that you can give him trade. Surely you could have just said we don't have to sustain him anymore. It's obvious, but that's in a passive way. Go furthermore. We're allowed to, let's say, if we want to help this person out, we're allowed to feed trade. You're not give trade to a Yid, but to this person you can, because in all probability, in all likelihood, this person is a guy. So the Gemara, if most people are Yid, so what way do we treat him like a Yid? You said, Omar, Rav Papa says, Lahach Zeloi Aveda. Now what? That if the person lost an object, you're permitted to return to that person the lost object. Now, we're going to learn about Mitzvah that you don't give back a lost object to a guy, back to bring him up as a apostle, as we'll see later. But in this case, we're going to say that the majority of people are Yidden, you can give back an Aveda. What about now, there's a famous question. We're going to learn in the third paragraph about Bakama, and Shmuel said later on here as well. Ein holchin b'mammon acharoy. Shmuel says when it comes to money matters, the probability is not good enough. The other person has a cheskes mammon. The fact the money is sitting in his house, in his bank account, probably means that it's his. You want to take some of that money away, you have to prove that, roiv is not good enough proof. Ein holchin b'mammon acharoy. You tell me now the majority of people in that city are Yidden, we have to return the Aveda to this person. But Ein Holchem Mamnach Haroy, majority is not good enough. So the Rishonim answer that when do we say Roiv is not good enough? When it's against the Cheskes Mammon. I have money in my bank account, it's mine. You want to take it away from me, you have to prove that I owe you that money. The fact that there's a strong chance I owe you the money is not compelling evidence. But when it comes to an object that was found, I don't have a Cheskes Mammon. It was never mine. Because it's never mine, and as soon as I picked it up, possibly a mitzvah to return it to the owner, which means it never became mine. And it's a suffix that became mine. And therefore, because it's only a suffix that became mine, I don't have a cheskes mammon. In this case, Shmuel agrees that the roiv is stronger. Says the Gemara, it says half and half, Yisro is treated like a yid. In what respect is he treated like a yid? You can't say to return a lost object. Because if it's return lost object, then what's the difference of half and half or majority? In both cases, the same outcome. So Amar Shlaki, Linazikin. Talk about the laws of damages. Now, the laws of damages are as follows. If a Yid animal, we're going to learn about Bakama, gores another animal, so the first 3 times, we pass on Allah, the first 3 times, you're considered a tam, you only pay half the nezik, and the 4th time you're a muad, you're considered now a habitual, this animal is a habitual gorer, and you should have been aware of it, and therefore you have to pay the full amount. You pay nezik shalom. But the other way around, if a goy's animal gores our animals, they have to pay the full nezik from the very beginning. So, what's the case over here? You say that 50-50, we don't know the child, the state of the child is, we're going to treat him like a yid. In which, what happened? The day our animal gored his animal, and therefore we're going to say that you're a yid, we only have to pay you half the damage. Ushkoil. Let the Yid say to the person, you bring it ayah. Why should I pay you? You don't have to pay the guy. So if you bring it either you read and I'll pay you. Like Tzich is talking about the Nokhe to the day to the on his animal, go to our animal, he has to pay. Now, a guy, there's no such thing as a time he should pay the full amount. So Palga Mishalim, he only pays half. The either Palga with the other half, so he pays half like a Yid, and then this child says to the Yid, you want me to pay the other half? So he wanted to go, you prove to me that I'm a guy. Right now, it's a 50-50 chance. In the majority of people will be goyim, you'd have to pay. But right now, it's half the city Yid and half the city goyim. You need to pay me. You have to prove that I'm a goy before I pay you. Either Paul Gomel, the other half, he says, I see Raya the Lavi Strong, you prove that I'm not a Yid, the etten lechain, and then I will give it to you. Hadin alop sulisas. I'm not exactly sure. I never understood why this next Mishnah is part of the second parak, because after this next Mishnah we sort of digressed to other things and not part of the first parak. Because we continue with the same argument of Gamliel and what do you call it? And Rabbi Yeshua, they believe we continue the same theme. Ha'isha shashis amla. If a woman became a widow, Oishin is Garshin, or she was divorced, and now she claims a ksuva. Remember, we learned sometimes they didn't write a ksuva, or she had a ksuva but she lost it. If she had still has a ksuba, just look what it says in ksuba. The dispute here revolves around what was the status when she got married. He I met her. She said, "B'sulin and Satani, you married me when I was a psulin. If you owe me 200." Who I met? He says, "No, ki ella almana nesatichon. I married you. You're already a widow. Therefore, I only owe 100." And we have no evidence one way or another. Now the question is, why isn't that called a meidah b'miktzas? We have a rule. If I ask you for $100 and you say I only owe you 50, from the Torah's perspective, you have to swear on the balance. It says ki huzeh. We'll learn Baba Kama in the end, in the beginning. Meidah b'miktzas. If you admit to a partial loan, you have to swear that you don't owe the balance. But you gave credence to what I said, and therefore you have to swear on the balance.
Can I ask? So when did this conversation take place? Because he's already passed away. She's a widow.
Okay, true. With the kids, she's in his amla. She's disputing with the heirs, and in his gasher with the ex.
Mm-hmm.
And why isn't this considered a meidah b'miktzas? So we say the Russian will talk about because it's a shtar shibur kakos. The law of meidah b'miktzas only applies to metaltlin, does not apply to property, to land. We'll learn that later as well. We learn from psukim it does not apply to land. And every ksuba is backed up with assets, and therefore land, and therefore it's not a meidah b'miktzas. Even though later on we made a special takana that metaltlin portable should also be tied to the ksuba, and so therefore all of the Rishonim ask why isn't this meidah b'miktzas? Because machlek is the Rosh and Rambam, but the bottom line is that the Rosh says the way people explain the Rosh is that the woman basically relies on the assets, portable, come and go. She doesn't really rely on that. Anyway, so what happens in this case? So if there were witnesses that they were there at the chasna and they saw how she went, and if the minig is that she went to the chuppah dressed like someone who was a psula, then that's enough. That's considered psula. But if she was dressed like someone who's a bull already married before, like today they have different color gowns in other places. So the imyash edim she walked out with an humah. We'll see tomorrow. An humah is like a basket on the head. We'll talk about it tomorrow. The Roisha Perua, and her head was revealed. Kesuvos Daf. That means that she was a psula, and her ksula is 200. And Rabbi Yechon Abruka says even chiluk klois, just like we throw the Shabbos before we throw lollies, they used to throw toasted wheat on the way to the chuppah, and we'll talk about that as well. All kinds of things did. Raya, that is the valid proof. Big argument here. So it says here that Roisha Perua, she's engaged already. Now we're talking about getting married. So we're talking about the chuppah. And Roisha Perua. So it proves from here that a woman does not have to cover her hair until after she is in the suah, she's married, and in the suah itself, only after, according to many, only after consummated. So the chuppah itself, the woman doesn't have to wear her head covered. That night she doesn't have to wear her head covered. It's only the following morning that she has to start wearing her head covered. Others say that after the yichud, so the chuppah she doesn't have to wear her head covered, but after the yichud she does. And their proof is from right here, because they said Roisha Perua. She had her head uncovered. If she would have been a married woman, she would have had her hair covered, because even though she's divorced now or a widow, a married woman still has to wear her head covered. Others disagree. They say if you look at Rashi closely, Rashi says Roisha Perua, he says she had hair on her shoulders, and that's the custom. They used to lead the kala from the father's house to the chuppah. They used to do that. So they want to learn from not just the opposite. That definitely she wore her head covered. That's why a lot of women have a minhag that they wear the head covered by the chuppah itself. But the custom used to be that they should always wear the head covered for 12 months. But then when it came to walking to the chuppah, they would take the cover off, the complete cover, and leave a partial cover on, and only some of the hair would droop down to or drape down to her shoulders. That's what Rashi says. The hair went down to her shoulders. Head uncovered. We all know what head uncovered means. Why does Rashi say the hair went down to the shoulders? To say most of her head was still covered, and she's supposed to cover her entire hair. Well, here most of her hair was covered, and only some of the hair was protruding, and therefore just opposite. And that's the different minhagim. If you see that some people have the women cover the hair under the chuppah, and some wait till the following morning. It depends on how we understand Rashi and the Mishnah right here. That's what the whole argument revolves around. Anyway, let's continue. We'll just finish the Mishnah. Says the Gemara further. Rabbi Yechon says, even if we just straight through these toasted wheat, is good enough proof. If somebody says to his friend, I want you to know that this field used to be your father's. And the kid had no idea. But I bought it. I'm believed. I'm the one, without me, you wouldn't even have known that this belonged to your father. I incriminated myself. I said, this field used to belong to your father once upon a time. But I want you to know that the same mouth that I incriminated myself, I sort of got out of it by saying that I brought it back. That's called a pesha asr, a pesha itit, and so on. And therefore, I'm believed. Why am I believed? 1 second. Because it's logical. I could have said nothing. But if there are witnesses, if they always knew that it was their father, and not just we knew, there were actually witnesses that used to buy your father, but I'm telling you, I bought it with no proof. What migu do I have? Now, we have a concept called a migu. We'll talk more about it tomorrow, but a migu means that it makes it more credible, it makes it more believable. If you were a liar, you could have said a bigger lie, a greater lie. And over here, we're talking about a different kind of migu called pesha asa pesha. A migu normally is, you asked me for $100. I said I paid it back to you. I could have said I never borrowed from you. Would have been a better lie, because then we don't know who to believe. I paid it back to you. What am I really saying is, yes, you're telling the truth that I owe you the money, but I'm telling you I paid you back, and you don't remember. I'm less credible. So that's called a migu di ibayi time. A migu, I could have made a better argument. Then you have a migu di ibayi shasik. I could have been quiet. Then you have pesha asa pesha hitit. And according to Rashi, pesha asa pesha hitit has nothing to do with migu. It's so compelling because anybody could have thought of it. You have to be smart. Sometimes you can say, well, maybe the guy didn't think of a better lie. He thought that saying I paid you back sounds better than saying I never borrowed from you in the first place. Because then one of us definitely is a liar. This way, none of us are liars. This way, you're telling the truth and I'm telling the truth. Maybe you just forgot. So if a migu by train is not so strong, not so compelling, but a pesha asa, this is anybody can just be quiet, don't say a word. You have to be very bright to realize you have to say anything. So therefore, according to Rashi, it has nothing to do with migu, and it's all powerful. Pesha asa pesha hita. According to Taisus, pesha asa pesha hita is just a higher kind form of migu. Because the Gemara says here, only if there were Eidim. So it comes out from the Mishnah here, what happens if there were no Eidim? But the children knew that this field belonged to their father. It seems to the Mishnah here that he would have a migu. But according to Rashi's understanding of Pesha Asa, it's no longer Pesha Asa. They knew that the field belonged to their father. Okay, there were no witnesses, but they were told by their father, whatever. They knew it. So I didn't say anything new when I said, this field belonged to your father. So therefore, there's no longer a Pesha Asa here. I didn't incriminate myself. But according to Taisus, there's still a migu here, because just because they thought of their fathers, they have no proof. So I could have just been quiet. It must be I'm telling the truth, which is much lower grade than Pesha Asa. Maybe we'll talk about it more in Ches, other places. Okay. And when I have a